The human race. For thousands of years before the creation of floating ships, all the races of the world remained fairly isolated. And humans were no different. Though the races of the world had some level of contact with each other, traveling the vast desert world of Dekutaras was extremely difficult and dangerous by foot. The distances between the homelands of the races were vast, the climate unforgiving, and the wildlife hostile. However, once floating ships were created, humans began to migrate from their home city-state surrounding the Lake of Men. Over the course of the next 1,300 years, they would form many nations. Today, humans rule 5 major powers of the world. These powers are the Athenican Federation, the Republic of Sigoria, the Kingdoms of Zel and Talos, and the Monian Theocracy. The most powerful of these 5 nations, and indeed perhaps the most powerful nation in the entire world, is the Athenican Federation. The largest nation in the world, the Athenican Federation covers nearly the entirety of the North Midland continent. It was formed in 750 after a major split between the provinces of the Sigorian Republic. Today it is made up of 9 nations with central power held in the capital city of Athos. The Athenican Federation boasts a very large and powerful fleet of warships, and an even larger fleet of transport and cargo ships. It has a strong presence throughout the world and is a trading partner with nearly every other nation. Its closest allies are the Republic of Sigoria and the Hanovor Diarchy, but it is also strong allies with many other nations of the world. The second of these human nations, the Republic of Sigoria, is the homeland of all the world's humans. The Republic was formed after the Great Sigorian Empire fell in 675. The city of Drymond is believed to be the first city of man, and it is from this city and region that men began migrating after the creation of the floating ship. People from all over the world traveled to Sigoria to partake in the wealth, beauty, extravagance, and freedom that the nation offers. While Sigoria is less powerful militarily than their Athenican cousins, they are not any less influential in world affairs, and have even wider diplomatic ties than the vast Athenican Federation. The third of these human nations is the Kingdom of Zel. Founded in 676 by Omanix the Uniter, a year after the Sigorian Empire fell. The kingdom is very wealthy and is a heavy trading partner with much of the world. The cities of the kingdom are very extravagant and are a widely sought-after place to live for those who can afford it and who are free, as the kingdom is heavily reliant on its slave labor. Though they practice the abhorrent institution of slavery, they are led by their religion, a blend of ancient human religion and the teachings of Okosho, to treat their slaves well. While the kingdom has a large fleet of warships, its capital city and many of its other large cities are world-renowned for their defensive prowess. The fourth human nation is the Kingdom of Talos. While most early human settlers that explored the great unknown moved south where they warred and traded with the elves of the south, a sect of them moved north, venturing so far out that by the mid-200s they were completely isolated from their homeland. These humans eventually formed the Kingdom of Talos in 359. During this time, the people of Talos were the only humans in the world that had contact with the orcs of the west. The orcs, who had not mastered the fire stone by this time, but were nonetheless very aggressive, were regularly slaughtered by the people of Talos. Unlike the Kingdom of Zel, the Kingdom of Talos has outlawed slavery. Though for most of the peasants Talos, there isn't much of a difference. These are frontier people and are very rough and durable. Life in the kingdom is difficult, but there is a fierce loyalty and pride expressed among the people for their homeland. The final human nation is the Monian Theocracy. The oldest living human nation, the Monian Theocracy, was established in 211. After the Great Sky Fire, a large and powerful group arose within the city of Drymond called the Monian Society. It was a religious order that was very much concerned with the end times, a theme that was undoubtedly seeded when fiery stars fell from the sky and not soon after men were given the power of flight. This religious sect became ever more isolated from their society and so trekked southward. In the year 211 these humans formed the Monian Theocracy. The nation is very isolated and has very few powerful ships of war, but their cities are immensely protected with heavily armored walls and cannons. Once a target for the pirates and warlords of the Sea of Fire, the Monian borders are strong enough to repel most threats of this manner. Within the walls of the capital city contain some of the most ancient scrolls and texts that the tribe of man has ever created. Indeed, the The Republic of Sigoria have entrusted entire libraries of texts to the safekeeping of the Moni and theocracy. It is said that when all the world goes up in flames, at least the Moni and theocracy will live on to tell the tale of man. The elves. The elves of the world rule over more nations than any other race in the world. The homeland of the elves are the ancient cities of Old Hannavor, Enil, Seamurden, and Atumos. For thousands of years most elves lived relatively peacefully in this small region of the world. However, after the Great Sky Fire and the founding of the religion of Okosho, schisms would form between various houses of elves that would seed 1,000 years of conflict and war between the opposing houses of Okosho. Some houses of elves kept the seat of their power in the region of the homeland, surrounding Lake Okosho. These houses would form the Akashan Empire. However, in the early 500s there was a decade-long civil war within the empire which would cause the empire to fall in the year 517. Several nations arose after the fall of the empire, and two of them remain until today, the Hannavor Diarchy and the Order of Okosho, both established in 517. The Hannavor Diarchy is ruled by a council that is democratically elected by the people of the Diarchy, and by a religious council that is chosen by the religious order inside the holy state of Hannavor. The capital cities are Hannavor, which is the home of the religious order, and Atumos, which is the seat of power for the people of the realm. The diarchy consists of many large thriving towns and cities and has considerable wealth. It also has a very powerful fleet of warships and a large army, though most of its force is concentrated near the holy capitals of Atumos and New Hannavor. The Order of Okosho is a deeply religious society that is based on a fundamentalist interpretation of the teachings of Okosho. The Order is a fairly closed-off society. Unlike their cousins in Hannavor, they do not have a multicultural state. Their borders are closed to almost all outsiders and they are guarded by a large number of warships. The nation is ruled by the religious order the House of Okosho, whose seat of power lies in one of the ancient cities of the Elven tribe, Enil. The nation lives under strict religious law. In 737, a sect of elves in the south of Westland formed the Ahilarian Brotherhood, a fundamentalist sect of the religion of Okosho. This region was largely peaceful and became a refuge for elves not wishing to participate in the constant wars between the other elven nations, or in the intermingling with the other races of the world. For most of its history, the Brotherhood was largely undisturbed and remained fairly isolated from the rest of the world. While the Brotherhood has never had a powerful or large fleet of ships, they have very strong city defenses. Recently they have become much more open to the rest of the world, and have become somewhat of a refuge for all races of the world to escape the varying conflicts of the world. A few houses of the Okosho Empire would venture far out west where they would encounter war with, and eventually conquer the Orcs of the West, forming the Gontar hegemony in 667, and the mountain tribes of Kra in 714. Though the Orcs are by far the most physically powerful race of people in the world, they are at a huge intellectual disadvantage to every other race. Like their first encounters with humans, the Orcs of this region were easily defeated in battle by the elves and their floating warships and firestone weaponry. Over the course of the next 100 years the elves of Axparima began conquering, or forming alliances with all the Orc tribes of the region, forming a massive dominion of Orc clans headed by elf chiefs. This symbiotic relationship between the two peoples, the elves who ruled and provided the intellectual power to strategize and design, and the Orcs who provided the physical power to conquer and build, worked very well for the two races. In 667, in the capital city of Natus, the Gontar hegemony was officially established, becoming the most powerful clan in all the West. This power has only grown since. Today, the Gontar hegemony has a massive and powerful fleet of warships and is perhaps the most powerful nation in the world. There is a smaller nation of elves and Orc people that live in this region as well, called the mountain tribes of Kra. These people live in a vast mountain range called the Kra Mountains and have over the centuries resisted Gontar rule, with ships being largely ineffective within the rocky terrain of the Kra Mountains. Other elves would venture north, forming many empires and kingdoms, which would fall and rise over the centuries, eventually giving rise to the Prian Kingdom, the Kingdom of Belzed and the Confederacy of Lix. They'd also interbred and cohabitated with humans to form the Kingdom of Cyran as well as many of the minor kingdoms throughout the world. For thousands of years elves have lived in the Midlands, but as the elves of Hannavor migrated northward and collided with these elves and the humans of the North Midlands, there were many battles, wars, and unions between them. Many nations arose and fell during this time, but what emerged from this period was a kingdom that unified the human and elven settlers of the Midlands. The Kingdom of Cyrran was founded in the year 558, when two great families, the Zenosians of Sigoria and the Vorna of Hanover, joined through marriage, giving the world its first queen and female ruler, Queen Isaja. Over the course of the next 100 years, the Kingdom of Cyrran united all the free cities and minor kingdoms of the region. Through both war and diplomacy, the kingdom created a vast nation that produced immense wealth and prosperity due to its large amounts of firestone mines, trade with the other nations of the world through the Sea of Fire, and by utilizing the talents and skills of the best of human and elven kind. Today, the Kingdom of Cyrran is a powerful and wealthy nation, though much of the wealth a nation has is held by the royal families who rule over the several princedoms that make up the kingdom. While the overall power rests with the king, the 6 princedoms within the kingdom largely operate independently and are ruled over by a prince or princess. The kingdoms of Peria and Belzed are the newest nations in the world. They were established in 1319 after the war between the Hanover Diarchy, the former Republic of Soldinia and the Athenican Federation on one side, and the Kingdom of Cyrran and the former Kingdom of Shrana on the other. The latter side lost the war, and a treaty was signed which saw the Kingdom of Shrana dissolved into 2 separate powers. The Paean Kingdom and the Kingdom of Belzed, the Republic of Soldinia joined the Athenican Federation, and the Kingdom of Cyrran losing several cities in the region and forced to pay tolls for any trade through the region. This region has been rife with conflict ever since the war. While both kingdoms have outlawed slavery, they lured many former slaves into serfdom within their respective kingdoms. There is an infamous route through this region into the Sea of Fire known as Slavers River, where thousands of former slaves make their way from the Confederacy Licks to the Sea of Fire to join the ranks of the pirates, cutthroats, and thieves that populate this region. The Confederacy of Licks, founded in 1163, is a small region of isolated continental islands in the Great Expanse. It is the only nation in the world where one race enslaves another race, as the Elven enslaved tens of thousands of humans on these miserable island states. This region is in constant conflict as all the nations in the region are continuously raiding and freeing slaves. While most elves remained near the region of their homeland, for thousands of years elves had been settling and forming cities in the South Midlands. However, after the Great Sky Fire, when all the peoples of the world began expanding, and this region would see the rise of massive kingdoms. However, in the late 700s and early 800s, as the Ulsangir began forming alliances with each other and growing as a military power to their east, the elven kingdoms of this region united and formed the Athsian Empire in 814. This empire has been a powerful force in the south and within the Sea of Fire ever since. The empire is the world's largest exporter of white firestone, a firestone that has the property of radiating freezing temperatures for long periods of time. While they are a relatively smaller nation, they have survived many wars against more powerful nations, including the Athenican Federation and Hanover Diarchy during the War of Alas, and the Soras Collective over the course of hundreds of years. While these nations make up the major powers ruled by elves, elves have spread throughout the world and rule over several minor kingdoms and also make up sizable minority populations in several provinces of the Athenican Federation and other minor kingdoms throughout the world. The Dwarfs. The Dwarfs' homeland is the region surrounding the mountains of Dorgoroth within the current state called the Onyxian Union. Like humans, dwarfs rule 5 of the world's major powers, but also rule several minor kingdoms and make up a sizable percentage of the population of others. The largest and most powerful dwarf nation is the Onyxian Union. The Union was formed in 564 after several large-scale wars between the tribes of Onyxia and the Sigorian Empire. For the past 800 years, the Union has been one of the most powerful nations in the world and today is the world's largest miner and exporter of firestone armor and metal. However, after the Onyxian Civil War of 1292 to 1306, the once mighty Union has been split into 3 nations. Many of the tribes of Onyxian remained loyal to the Union, others joined the Akulak Empire at the end of the war. In 1337, a schism arose in the empire and 2 separate nations claimed the seat of power, setting off a civil war inside the empire. The houses of Saharia, a very popular female warrior lord from Nays, and Relikugar, the eldest son of the deceased Akulak, declared war on each other. Though the war was never officially ended, the two factions formed the Saharian Dominion and the Akulak Despotate, and have been in a state of constant tension for nearly 40 years. Several tribes in the Eastlands that never joined the Onyxian Union formed the United Tribes of Yukas in 895, after the expansion of the Ulsanja to their south and the Union to their north. These tribes were very independent and sought to have sovereignty over their own tribes, but they knew that unless they banded together, they would each be vulnerable to the larger nations. Thus, the United Tribes of Yukas was formed, where the tribes are not unified by any centralized power, but rather by treaties that bound the protection and sovereignty of one tribe to all. The Jipagian Federation is the fifth nation ruled by dwarfs. The Jipagi are a race of dwarfs that, like the elves that formed the Athsian Empire, migrated away from their ancestral homeland long before the Great Sky Fire. They began forming large villages along the Great Blue, a vast ocean in the east. With the Ulsanja to their east, and the warring dwarf tribes in the north, the dwarfs of Jipagi largely became isolated from the world. This region along the Great Blue became a mostly peaceful haven for mass fishing, agriculture, and innovation, with all the separate tribes working together in relative harmony. In the early 700s, with the Ulsanja growing in size and power west of their cities, and their northern cousins forming massive alliances, the Jipagi cities formed the Jipagian Federation in 714. The federation became very wealthy, trading with the Soras Empire, the dwarfs of the north and the humans and elves of the Midlands, developing a consistently sizable navy of warships and transport ships. The Jipagi are the world's largest exporter of seafood and salt, and one of the largest miners of white firestone. They are trading partners with every nation in the world, even the isolated Gontar hegemony. No other nation in the world has wider connection and trade reach than the Jipagi, the Ulsanja. The Soras Collective is the only nation in the world ruled by the Ulsanja. It is almost 100% comprised of Ulsanja, the reptilian humanoid race of Isix Mountains. While the other races of the world formed large nations and alliances with each other, the Ulsanja never created a large nation-state, but instead only formed small villages scattered throughout the region south and east of the Sanja Isix Mountains. While there were very small groups of Ulsanja people that migrated outside of this region and made their homes among the human, dwarf and elven population, they were largely despised or mistrusted wherever they went. In the early 800s, prompted by the outside world's prejudices and the immediate threat of the Athsian elves to their west, these scattered tribes of Ulsanja came together in solidarity and formed the Soras Collective in 828. Like the Orcs of the West, the Ulsanja are physically superior to all the other races, and have armies of feared and fierce warriors, and a fleet of warships that is unlike most other fleets, consisting mostly of small heavily armed ships, more suited for raiding parties, and patrolling their borders and cities with many more, albeit less powerful, ships than most other nations. Though their fleet consists mostly of smaller vessels, they have many heavily armed ships of war and are as formidable a nation as any in the world. Their main trading partner is the Jipagian Federation, and they do trade with other nations as well, though almost exclusively in border cities. There are several other minor powers in the world that will be briefly introduced. The City of Fire. The City of Fire is considered to be the capital city of the free world. With a huge population of humans, elves, dwarfs, and even some Ulsanja and Orcs, the City of Fire is a crossroads for all the peoples of the world. A bastion for pirates, criminals, and degenerates, but also a beacon of hope for impoverished people from all over the world, who make the long and dangerous journey to this place in hopes to find something better than the tough life of the outer cities. Whether that something is adventure, treasure, or simply steady employment on the many trade ships that pass through the city every day from all over the world, if one seeks a new life, the City of Fire is where to find one. It is also a highly sought-after destination for the world's most wealthy people, as everyone knows. All the things that are illegal or considered taboo in the rest of the world are on the menu in the City of Fire. The city, as well as much of the rest of the Sea of Fire, is governed and policed by various gangs, warlords and pirate factions, called the Syndicate, a loose collection of warlords and pirates that all receive covert support from the Kingdom of Cyran, the Kingdom of Belzed, the Paean Kingdom, the Athsian Empire, the Saharian Dominion and the Akulak Despotate, who maintain a fragile facade of order and stability in the region. Even though the area is plagued by pirates, thousands of trade ships sail through the Sea of Fire every year and make port in the City of Fire. Like the City of Fire, Sailhari is a very wealthy and heavily trafficked trade city. However, unlike the City of Fire, Sailhari is largely controlled, unofficially, by the Kingdom of Cyan. The city is the world's second largest hub for pirates and rogue criminals in the world. The other cities of the Sea of Fire are also quasi-administered and ruled by the Syndicate, though each city-state has their own governmental structure. The cities of Serpent Strait, the world's most heavily trafficked trade route, are administered and ran by another faction called the Coalition. The Coalition is a semi-criminal organization that is much more allied with the Athenican and Gepagian federations, the Republic of Siguria, the Onyxian Union and the Saurus Collective. The Coalition maintains, with the help of its allies, relatively peaceful trade through Serpent Strait in the dwarf-ruled cities of Gal, Shalish and Sisal. The Commonwealth of Bethamni is the most isolated city-state in the world, ruled by elves but is populated with every race of people seeking to leave behind the conflicts and messiness of the world, or to board sail ships to venture out into the Great Blue in search of adventure. Similarly, the dwarven-ruled city of Gatherton on the eastern shores of the Sea of Onyxia is a city where people of the world go to escape, or to trek out into the unknown. Zarahara. The most massive free trade city in the north, Zarahara is one of the oldest cities in the world. Once a mighty kingdom, Zarahara is now a hub for trade in the north. The minor kingdom, under the rule of King Sabadja, has a small fleet of warships and heavy city defenses. It also has strong alliances with nearly every power in the world. The population is about 40% human and 40% dwarf, and there are many elves that live in Zarahara as well. The Kingdom of Kingford is a minor kingdom in the north, ruled by dwarfs and humans. The most northern nation, Kingford, is world-renowned for its bitter winters, harsh climate, and abundance of white firestone.